Hi, this is John Grant with the REI Policy Institute in Washington, D.C. I wanted to take the opportunity this week to discuss our upcoming April newsletter, some of the content in that. For folks interested in what it is that I do here in D.C., you can visit www.reipolicy.com. And you can subscribe to our newsletter there. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can get on our Facebook page as well. This week, we'll have the newsletter out at the end of the week. There's been one topic that's come up in the last month that I wanted to address. And I think it's relevant to the extent, at least, that there are real estate products and services that relate to Dodd-Frank and also the CFPB. And, there has been, a few articles out there talking about, if a Republican wins the White House, that Dodd-Frank and the CFPB would be eliminated. So I wanted to kind of give an insider's perspective on, whether or not that's really a realistic proposition. I know this may not be relevant to everybody, but I think it might be instructive just to demonstrate that, people who follow REI Policy Institute get really good perspective on what's going on inside the Beltway. So the first thing to understand with what's going on with this sort of latest chatter about Dodd-Frank, and in particular the CFPB, has to do with the new single issue campaign going on in Washington that started, I think, in January. Now, what do I mean by a single issue campaign? Well, let me give you an example. REI Policy Institute, we represent an actual industry, and there are a number of issues that we cover for that industry. So that's just a broad, comprehensive government relations, government affairs program. A single issue campaign is someone doesn't like a very specific policy, or someone doesn't like a particular agency or bureau. They operate differently as well. I'm very open about who it is I represent in all the meetings that I have and with the media. These single issue campaigns are clandestine, at least for the most part. We have no idea who's funding them. Even most people that consult with them are unknown. But there was a new one that started in January that deals with the CFPB. I think it's Protect America's Consumers, something like that. And they're the ones generating a lot of this chatter. If you examine kind of what they say, they make some interesting points about the CFPB. But fundamentally, the question is, at least for this topic, can that lead to the elimination of the CFPB? Well, I don't even think they're trying to do that. I think they're trying to reform the CFPB. Most people in Washington want to change how the CFPB is funded. And so the CFPB gets its money from Congress rather than from, I think they get it from the Fed now. And they want to change how it's structured. So rather than have one person in charge, they want to make it like the SEC or the FTC. They make it a commission. So you have 5 people basically voting on a regulatory policy. So I think it's more of a reform effort. But the question is, will this be effective? I mean, mostly what they'll do is media efforts, and I'm sure they'll probably have influence over some hearings that take place on Capitol Hill. A few tough questions will get asked. My general view is this, is that the people who are in the business of single issue campaigns, most of them. You have to hire a firm to operate it for you. They seem very good at taking money from billionaires. Okay, they have that talent. But in terms of shaping policy for the long term, I mean, look at where we are. Name a topic. Energy, housing, even. We don't really have a cohesive long-term policy on any issue. So it's a little difficult to argue that these groups are great at shaping policy. And then in terms of, how they do, in terms of, going after a particular agency or bureau, look at the size of the government. If they were any good at it, the government would be smaller, not bigger. So my guess is, while they have a few initial really good points, my guess is that they'll go back to traditional tactics. And look, the bottom line is this. If you don't have the guts to put your name next to the criticisms that you have about an agency, you're not the person that's going to actually significantly reform it. I mean, look, it might be a bit of an overstatement here, but it's a form of cowardice if you think about it. I mean, they're out there criticizing the agency, but no one wants to claim responsibility for it. And that's, on some level, that's just pathetic. Even though the CFPB needs fixing, and so does Dodd-Frank. I bring this all up in the context of, will Dodd-Frank and the CFPB be eliminated or dramatically reformed? I don't see it. Another thing to think about is the politics of this. If we look at the election politics taking place right now, what do we see? Really, on both the Democratic side and the Republican side, you see a rise in what I would call populism. Now, that's not going to go away regardless of who wins the nominations and who wins the presidency. There will still be that large block of populism on both the left and the right out there. So the question is, if one wanted to eliminate Dodd-Frank, which was billed as the Wall Street reform legislation, what's in it politically for anybody? Does any party want to be seen as the party that, got Wall Street off the hook? And even though that may not be, precisely what would take place, that's how it would be perceived. I mean, politically, it makes very little sense. And then when it comes down to a vote count, you need 60 votes in the U.S. Senate to end cloture to get a bill passed. Okay? And that means end the debate. And I don't see that remotely in terms of something this dramatic that they can actually get the votes to end, to eliminate Dodd-Frank or the CFPB. I think reform will be hard enough. So anyway, I wanted to kind of dispel through information and some inside baseball as to kind of what's going on here in D.C. any concerns that folks who use products and services based on Dodd-Frank that there was any legitimate possibility of Dodd-Frank being eliminated. I don't see it. Other items that will come up in our newsletter this month will include some more information about opportunities for distressed buyers, and all that will be based on data that we're obtaining. We'll have the housing numbers as well, and some more political insight. So I thank you for your time. Again, REIPolicyInstitute.com to subscribe to the newsletter, which funds our campaign. And please spread that around and get the word out about that. And you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel and to Facebook as well. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.